Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's reports for the 18th. No real surprises here going on. We dipped fractionally, pushed back up. Now post market, just sitting there right next to the highs. But we keep pushing to new highs. Very consistent with what we're seeing from the NBI readings. We're still seeing now NBI white rising. So shorts getting a little more active. But when you look at the DOC, it's like cyan under red. There's still no question what you're seeing has just been short-term buyers fading off quite a bit, and we'll see if it's the dip below the negative 13.5 would express a little bit of weakness, but any pivot up here would definitely propel us into much higher territory. So it becomes pretty simple calculus. It's just a matter of waiting for conversion in the signal, and at this particular point, not happening. Again, we're watching the shakeout histogram, just wanting to make sure that it passes back well above 2149. We're at 1943, so that becomes the consistency for the breakout and determining how strong it will be over time. From an NQ standpoint, identical to the ES, so they're really congruent at this particular stage. I think the DOC reading on NASDAQ is just a teeny bit stronger in general, but relatively speaking, they're pretty consistent. And of course, flying in the face of all the things that are taking place from an economic standpoint, but that's normal because again, the market's going to read weakness as an opportunity for the Fed to fade, which is this idea right here where you get rates moving antithetical to the reality where they currently are, but the suggestion being that they think the Fed is going to have to slow down and stop. I don't know that the Fed is all that interested in continuing. They just really wanted to suck up all the liquidity as well as maintain a more normalized rate so that if there is a future problem, they have quite a bit of range now in which to work with. I know a lot of people aren't happy about normalizing rates from that wonderful period of zero interest rates for as long as there was, but this is more closer to what things had always been. So, and there's still no assurance that inflation is completely under control. Obviously, it helps easing here with a little bit of oil coming right back to what we expected, which was the return to the breakout, and that's what it's doing at this particular stage. And potentially, if more short activity could get a spike further up of the white, that would suggest a move down towards the 50%. Hasn't happened yet. Right now, we're just in the sell signal of magenta lower, but if that pivots up before, then it'll all turn back around and continue higher. So it's just a matter of following that reading overall. From a euro standpoint, continuing to make new highs in ridiculous fashion and filling back a little bit of that. Again, these kind of shenanigans are just typical of just playing against the crowd. When you get too many people in one direction, it's easy to go against them, and particularly like even for the market, there's so many naysayers because they think that the market has moved too far. But when I make my adjustments for inflation and everything else, I don't think the market has moved that far. Actually, I think it's been quite weak relative to potentially where it could have been had things looked stronger from an economic standpoint. It should be well over 5K from an ES standpoint. From a gold standpoint, you can see just a little creep up, and that's a reflection of what we see in oil there, a little bit not significant. And I think that's reflected too here in the, what do you want to call it, failure to explode from Bitcoin and then on the whole XRP situation and that, because it was much to do about nothing, and still have those positive extremes to fill back in. And just a matter of collecting the news exuberance from others, the ETH that never got that exuberance because it was all Bitcoin related news, and ETH has been soft other than the news moment, and everyone sold into that news to capture as close to the highs as they could. Still weak from a reading standpoint, though you do have cyan under red, which is interesting at this particular stage, coming off of filling the positive extreme. So the potential for a turnaround does exist. It's just got to prove it. So here we go from R50K. We've had those wonderful rallies, the brief. We knew that when we were in this particular case, we could see the turnaround setup happening with the magenta over, and it didn't take long before it crested over the white at that particular stage, and that led to the pop. And here we're getting a little bit of a fill, but we only had one positive extreme within that, and that has just filled in the post market there. So no issues with that. All of it quite congruent. Intraday, they cleared up the little stops, ran it up, and all those new buyers got sold into going through there. And then a little bit later on, after they got rid of those, it just ramped right back up in rather clean fashion. What's interesting about that, we always talk about this move of white shakeout when it finally starts to rise. Once that fade off begins, it's usually when you get a retest. And in this case, we ended up a little bit of a contrary. We had the small move to the 76 and then it spiked, but right before the end of the day is when they brought it right back down and filled in all that space. Now, there still are some more positive extremes that took place from right about there in the 45-40 range, and that got filled all the way back over here a little bit later on in the post market. So they're still taking care of business from an algorithmic standpoint and doing what they need to do to shake everybody up and down. And kind of liking the consistency of it. This is far more normal than people may appreciate. So I think we're seeing a real clear return back to normalized trading for now, barring any special events. But I think that everything seems to be pretty well known at this particular stage, and so everyone's kind of comfortable with it. And the play then is just to expose people to one direction, get them motivated, and then sell into it. So keep looking for that. It's going to happen on the upside and the downside. So take advantage of both. As always, though, you can look for me in the Skype chat. Trade well.